So this last portion, well, we've got one more speaker closing things out, but we've got a portion that we've called Redefine Community and Reclaim Masculinity. And what this is going to be is it's going to be a conversation, men with men talking about redefining community and reclaiming masculinity. One of the things, if you notice the list of speakers that we had here today, we were very strategic in the type of people that we brought here. Because one of the things that you see in events that they do for youth and for men, a lot of times they want to bring in entertainers as the highlight of the event. Am I telling the truth? Like it's a movie star, it's an actor, which is great. But one of the things that you guys have the opportunity to see today that we don't see a lot of is an event where the focus is on men that have displayed what it takes to operate and be successful in the real world, because most of us are not going to be actors or rappers or singers. Most of us are going to be in the business world to some degree. Is that true? Okay. So one of the things we need to do as a community is start getting our minds in a position to where we start thinking in such a way that we can operate effectively outside of the confines of sports and entertainment. Because, again, that's not most of us, and that's not what most of us are going to do. So I am so honored to be able to host this next portion of the event. I'm going to read you just briefly the biography of the first gentleman who I'm about to invite to the stage. Jim Bledsoe has been blessed to have an integral part in the development and emergence of world-class industry leaders such as FedEx, Pulte Home Corporation. For the past 17 years, Jim has been a consultant, an entrepreneur. He's serving as the COO and CEO for 7 companies and an advisor to many. His areas of focus have been senior-level executive search, sustainable energy, efficient development, technology, manufacturing, transportation. This guy has done it all. So I'm welcome to bring to the stage my good friend Jim Bledsoe. And the other gentleman we're going to be talking with today, wow, what do I say? There are fewer people you're going to ever meet in your life that have accomplished as much as the man who I'm about to bring to the stage has accomplished. And one of the things I want to say about Jim, as well as the next gentleman I'm going to bring to the stage, is one thing I want you guys to pay attention to as this conversation is being held on this stage. One thing I want you to pay attention to is the mentality that these gentlemen present. When we talk about redefining masculinity, one of the things I would like to dispel right now is that being macho doesn't make you a man. Puffing your chest out doesn't make you a man. It doesn't matter how big your guns are, which I spent some time working on that, but it don't make you a man. If anything, it gives you a false sense of manliness, and it gives you a facade to hide behind. But one of the things that I love about, and again, Jim, this applies to Jim as well, there's a level of humility that you're going to see on this stage between these two gentlemen that I want you to pay very close attention to. Pay very close attention to that. George McGill is a retired business owner who, along with his late wife Millie, owned and operated the McGill Insurance Agency. Established in 1980, his agency was one of the top all-state insurance agencies in the state of Arkansas. He attended the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, where he immediately began serving as a civil rights activist and breaking down racial and educational barriers to ensure that people of all ethnicities would be treated fairly. I'm skipping around because I could go on for days. When former President William Clinton was governor of Arkansas, he appointed George as the first African-American to serve on the 7-member Contractors Licensing Board, which regulates the commercial construction industry in the state of Arkansas. If you haven't been on the website and looked at this man's resume, you're doing yourself a disservice. Would George McGill, I can't even say his name right. Please join us on the stage, sir. Again, I'm flabbergasted to be sitting up here about to do what I'm about to do, but again, I want you guys to know and understand what it is what you're looking at right here. What you're seeing right here in front of you, and this is not to take away from any of the other presenters or any other speakers that we've listened to today, but what you're seeing right now is a wealth of knowledge in terms of business, a wealth of knowledge is in terms of community building. If we were to sum up the business sense and the family sense, if we were to sum it up, you're looking at a good summary of everything that we're trying to do here. And I have the honor and privilege of having a conversation with you, gentlemen, and we're going to get it started. So, Mr. Bledsoe, I gave a brief run-through of your biography. Why don't you give everyone just a brief overview, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, take a minute, whatever. Tell us a little bit of who you are, what stood out in your career, and just start there.
So I usually start with, I am an incredibly blessed man. Certainly, each of us in this room have faced certain amounts of adversity. I look back on the positive side and the blessings that I've had regarding my parents, my family, the lessons that they have taught me, and the role models that they have served as. So how does that parlay into a career? And I think it comes down to a couple of things. One is to do what's right and to do the right thing. And there are distinctions between those two, but to stand up for something that is noble, worthy, honest, have trust, build relationships, and if nothing else, if on this earth, what I've found is that you plant the seed and you cultivate it, it will grow. And watching other people grow, if you have any kind of role in that, is one of the most beneficial and satisfying things that I can actually think of. But my career has been blessed by places, like he said, with FedEx, Pulte Homes, and the entrepreneurial community. So let me just close with, I am an incredibly blessed man in so many different dimensions.
Representative McGill, talk to me a little bit about the highlights of your career, just kind of what Jim was doing. Give everyone a brief taste of exactly who it is that we're dealing with on this stage in George McGill.
Well, first of all, let me say, what a turnout. The sponsors and the people who I watched them work hard last night putting this together for you. They've done a tremendous job, my brother. And it's a pleasure to be here. I come out of Arkansas, and I call it the great state of Arkansas, but I come from a poor family in the sense that we didn't have very much. Large family, that was 8 of us. And I'm probably the oldest man in the room, if not very close. And I came up in a time where they had water fountains that said white and colored. Restrooms that said white and colored. But because of some things that my father taught me, the first time I walked up the Capitol steps as an elected official representing a city that had water fountains that said colored and white, it was amazing to see what God can do. Amazing. It's been a wonderful journey. And along the way, we were taught to give and love. We come out of a culture of service. The kids in my family did not know they were poor because they were convinced that they were not the clothes we had to wear. We were not the shoes that we had to wear. We were not the car that my father had to drive to and from work. They taught us we were much, much more than that. If nothing else that you take from this conference, remember, you are much, much more than you would ever imagine. The question is, what do you choose to be?
Talk to me about what it means when we hear the term masculinity. There's a perception of it, and then there's a reality. Jim, what is the perception and what is the reality as you've observed?
I'll try to make the backstory real quick here because perception and interpretation is incredibly important. My wife had let a couple of orders on Amazon and Audible go on for a long, long time without getting benefit from it. So she finally called them, got them to not only stop it, but reverse it. And so she was a bit gun-shy about, automatic charges showing up on, our credit card. And so I actually ordered something that I needed. Some of you are technical, so I needed actually an adapter, a HDMI to VGA adapter. Well, when the Amazon thing came across, it said HDMI, male adapter, VGA. And my wife came in, she goes, "Did you just order something?" And so I said, "Yeah, I did." And I started to use hand gestures to talk about something that was very technical. And she thought it was some male enhancement thing. So how does that translate to masculinity when Josh put a thing on Facebook that said, "Come see my friend Jim Bledsoe at the Mastering Masculinity, Mastering Manhood conference." She started going, "What are you into these days?" So back to the interpretation, she thought, okay, there's another male enhancement thing he signed up for. The reality is that, and I told Josh this story the other day because to me the translation is, this really is a male enhancement workshop, seminar, because it's a matter of iron sharpening iron, as was said earlier today, but that we make each other better. It is a male enhancement with a different context altogether. So I hope that I didn't go stray too far from sort of the political correctness that might be expected, but that's the interpretation. So for me, it is a matter of iron sharpens iron, and we make each other better. If we operate in a vacuum, we wither and die. So that's what, to me, this is all about, having people, and we call ourselves, the dual JBs. Completely different generation, completely different race, yet we're bookends because Jim Bledsoe, JB, Josh Banks, JB. So anyway, there's a connection there, and a connection in between goes to community.
Love it. George McGill, what's killing our communities? What is killing our communities? When you look at all the negative statistics, and there are a number of them, there would appear to be an epidemic that's going on in the inner cities, in communities of color, with men in general. What's killing our communities?
There are several things that we could mention, but let me just talk about maybe one or two to keep the program moving. What I see in many communities is this belief that what I do does not matter. My vote does not matter. It doesn't matter if I participate in a discussion about race. It doesn't matter. That is killing our community. The other thing is a spirit of hopelessness that pervades many communities. And people can often talk about what we don't have, what we can't do. It's a spirit of hopelessness that permeates the communities. Thus, they do not progress at the rate that they should. What we're seeing now in America has come full circle to when I was 17 or 18 years old. The marches, the protests, Black Lives Matter, when you go 360 to when I was 17 and 18 years old, it was Black Power. Same thing. So we've come full circle. So the question becomes, what am I personally willing to do to make a difference in my community, in my church, in organizations where I give time? What am I personally willing to sacrifice? I recall at the University of Arkansas, at the age of 19 years old, we knew we were being treated unfairly. So 10 of us decided we were going to go to the chancellor's office and demand that we be treated fairly. And we stood on his office steps. And someone said, they're going to call the state police on you. And we said, we're not going to move. About 10 minutes later, someone says, the state troopers are on the way to remove you from this property. Of course, if I'd have known what I know now, I probably would have left. But being 18 and 19 years old, we looked at each other in the face and decided not to move. Same thing our young people are doing today. Be willing to take a stand against a popular cause. The popular cause at that time was not to allow us to participate. The popular way to do things back then was not to allow us to live in the dormitories. And the popular thing that they enjoyed doing was playing Dixie and waving the rebel flag on that campus. And we refused to budge. In the year 1966, University of Arkansas stopped playing Dixie and stopped waving the rebel flag. Are you willing to take a stand? It depends on what each one of you are willing to do to make a difference. Sometimes that means just telling some young person, like these men have done today, telling them you can be someone if you choose. Every day when you pass the mirror, at the end of your day, you look in that mirror, you should be able to say, I did something personally to make a difference.
Let that sink in for a minute. Jim Bledsoe, talk to me about success. You've former vice president of FedEx, Pulte Homes. What does it take to be successful? Is it a destination? Is it a journey? Talk to me about success.
Well, it is it's a journey, because a journey typically has a destination. You've got milestones. If you take off and drive to Fort Smith, Arkansas, you'll look, and know how many miles you got to go, what's the route that you're going to go, how fast you can go, where the speed traps are, and kind of, behave accordingly. So the old answer for Josh's question is, what does it take to be a success? The answer was hit your numbers. Basically to perform and accelerate beyond just performance measures. So that definition of success is a little bit, I won't say stale, but it's been traditional. And if you can go beyond success towards significance, I think you're on a much further journey. Just being then able to take a stand, to do the right thing. Talking about going full circle at FedEx, I took some significant, anybody know what CLM is? CLM, just for the vocabulary additions here, is career limiting moves. In other words, you take a risk that you put your career, you take some stands or decisions where you're putting your career at risk. So you're going beyond just what the success that you feel like you've had at that point, now risking because you want to reach further into significance. So to George's comment about, going full circle on, tonight, being on campus and so forth, I kind of feel like that in a very different context, because to take stands for the disenfranchised, to make decisions that weren't popular for people that had not had as loud a voice as they needed. Sometimes it puts you in a thin air category. And one of those that it did at FedEx was we had already started putting diversity classes out there for management. Well, it's going to take a long time to be able to permeate that through the rest of the organization. So I had an organization once I moved back to Memphis that I felt like we're not doing enough fast enough. So I'm putting every employee through diversity training. We trained up. We trained every employee. We did not have the budget for that. We couldn't add to staff to pay for all that. What that did was it created an incredible increase in awareness and sensitivity that served me in far greater ways than what we were delivering to the workforce, because differences in not only race but also in gender, also in, let's say, staffing, because you've got professionals with some with PhDs, and then you've got hourly employees who are, two most important questions are, am I going to have a job a year from now, and who's playing Monday Night Football this week? So talking about although to say that, what you accomplish and reach for gives you a platform to be able to take some risks, but back to the flag waving thing, my sensitivities were incredibly sharpened as a result of A, my own awakenings, but B, taking those risks, one of which had to do with the flag. So back to full circle, the certain social media and so forth that's going on regarding Confederate flags and statues and things like that, I took a big risk. I went to Overton High School in Memphis, Tennessee. We were the Overton Rebels. The Confederate flag was our symbol. And the class was almost exclusively white, 576 graduates that year. You go to Memphis State University, obviously it's a much different type of demographic makeup. I go to my 10-year class reunion, and it's all white. The alumni plus the plus ones, and it's a Hyatt Regency ballroom, so it's all white. The wait staff was about 90% black. Confederate flags on the wall. And so when the 20th came back around, I was back in Memphis by this time, and what do you do when you get your class reunion notices? You start pulling out yearbooks, you start pulling out photo albums, and pulled out the pictures of the 10th year class reunion, which I really didn't enjoy to begin with, and then you see all those pictures. So I sent in a request. Here's my deposit. But I respectfully request that we not use the Confederate flag for decoration. School name has changed. The sensitivities are much heightened now. And, I went on and on and on with that. But I said, if you, still insist on using it, please send me my deposit back and I won't go. So, I thought I'd taken a great stand. 2 weeks later, I get a notice back that said, we'd really love to see you, wish you change your mind and come, but we are going to use the Confederate flag. So starting with my 20th, going to the 30th, going to the 40th, I've not attended any of those class reunions. I am proud to say that they don't use it anymore, certainly not in any kind of overt ways. I'm sure there's a few holdouts that still do it. But back to, going full circle of that, and I know this strays from the question a little bit, but the platform that you're given as a result of achieving some type of milestone success, if you don't use that to be able to take a stand for something that's right, in terms of, leading organizations within FedEx, but also in your private life, those got to match. They can't be two separate ones. So it's a matter of and I wish that I could actually synthesize the experiences that actually did occur because just like your phone, you've got to, like when you take a picture, your selfie or somebody else, that's a two-way street right there. What you see of that person is very different from you when you flip it and take a selfie. So if you can't look through, somebody else's eyes and see what their heart feels and knows, then you're completely missing the boat. And whatever newspaper, social media, whatever tells you, you're kind of led to believe. So if you can't feel it, experience it with and through others, then you're missing the boat. That's just my definition of the success. Go way beyond success. You've got to go to significance.
Wow. George McGill, who is my neighbor, and what is my responsibility to my neighbor?
I come out of a household of preachers, ministers. My dad was a minister. My uncle was a minister. And early on, they taught me some biblical principles that I did not start practicing until I was in my 30s. Always kept a Bible because that's what we did. That was our culture, to go to church. And we were taught, my dad taught us, said, look, be a good guy, go to college, go to work or own a business, get you a nice family, and you will have it made. That was it. And I kept note of that. He said, you have it made if you do those things. And in my 30s, I had all of that. Had a great education, great successful business, worked my butt off, but I had a business that had grown, had a wonderful family, had 2 pretty cars in the yard, brand new home, vacations, anywhere I chose. But there was something missing in my life. I said, Dad said I would have it made, but there's something missing. And there was a prompting that caused me to turn and look at my desk. I told you earlier on I always kept a Bible. And I turned and pulled that Bible off the bookshelf and decided then, this is what's missing. And then I said, let me try some of this stuff. Let me try this. And I may be venturing far from your question, but I want to tell these men and young men this. I said, let me try some of this. And the first thing I tried, I said, let me try kindness. It's talked about producing the fruits of the Spirit. Let me try. I didn't get too deep in the stuff that I couldn't understand, but I knew what kindness meant. I said, let me, on purpose, every day try kindness. I'm going to take a position of kindness today. And I decided what I'll do, I'll try it for a couple of hours. If it works, I'll do it again, do it a little longer. If at the end of the day, I'll do an assessment tomorrow. And if there has been any benefit to me being kind, I think I'll try it again. And I did. And I said, wow. It's amazing what happens when you adopt some godly principles. And it was not long after that, I found myself like David saying, when he said David was a man after God's own heart, I began to thirst for that. What can I do next? What can I do next? And I say that to say, you can be what you want to be. You can go where you want to go. I'm a living witness to that. I began to practice some things that my dad told me and pointed out to me. And I was in my 30s when I began to do that. Taught me how to be meek. He said, son, at some point in your time, you're going to be successful and people are going to say great things about you. See, don't get sidetracked by the great things about you. And once you understand that, then when people say bad things about you, you don't get sidetracked. Understand, wherever you are and what you're going to be doing, there is a creator that already has that laid out for you. All you have to do is this. As long as the things you tend to do are Christ-like, you will be amazed at what will happen in your life. Be kind. Know how to forgive people. Be long-suffering. Don't give up on your buddies when they don't get it right. Know how to forgive those who hurt you. Learn to be meek. He says, as long as you tend the things you tend to do, it's not about perfection. But as long as the things you tend to do are Christ-like, you'll be amazed at what will happen to your life. And he says, have the courage to be who you are and have the courage to take responsibilities for your own actions. He said, that is your work. That is your work. And then people will find you. And you'll find a place where you'll make significant impacts in your home, in your community, in your state, even in the nation.
Man, I don't know what y'all are feeling out there, but I'm sitting here listening to this, and this is like good. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to open it up. We've got time for 2 questions. I'm going to open it up to the audience. We've got time for 2 questions. Yes, sir.
As far as challenges go, whenever you face certain, because as you have a goal and a vision and somewhere you want to be, there's certain things that's going to get you, and I'm currently here, that's why I'm asking. But there's certain things that kind of get you in like where do I go? You know, like how do I get out of this and to the breaking point to where it's like, boom, you're there. You know, like you're successful or you got that momentum going. Like breaking through that barrier, what advice would you give to kind of get out of that?
Two huge influences I had on my career, both were at FedEx and also at Pulte Homes. So one goes to this. Fred Smith, who was the founder and visionary for FedEx, said that, you know, when I'm looking for talent, especially executive talent, I'm not looking for the best quarterback. I'm looking for the best athlete. And by that, he meant people that could play different positions on the field, have some flexibility, versatility, and those types of things. And so what it taught me was to be willing to play out of position, knowing that I had, you know, the ability to adapt and to do that. I was sharing with Keyshawn earlier about one of the best things that ever happened to me was being pulled out of management, and I thought I'd done something wrong, put into an engineering role, and it was really the best career thing that ever happened to me at age 23. Went back into senior management and enjoyed my career there. The other influence was, so I played different positions. I may not have made the Hall of Fame, but I made an all-star team or two along the way. So when I went to Pulte Homes, Bill Pulte is the founder and visionary for Pulte Homes, and that's in the home building space. Not quite the icon Fortune magazine would say Fred Smith is, but they have about the same net worth. Hugely successful. He built his first house when he was a teenager. It's not in the best part of Detroit, but it's still standing, and therefore a testimony to, I mean, he built it as a teenager. So he is the poster child for find a job you love and you'll never work another day in your life, because his vision was design homes, build homes. And so here was the soundbite that he left me with. He asked me about why I would leave a company like FedEx, and I asked him about his early days at Pulte. And this soundbite I bet I've used 1,000 times, and I hope if you get nothing else out of this conference, you would get this. That he said that when he took the company public, and it goes specifically to you're talking about on challenges and successes and who you got to do it with, because you ain't going to do it alone. Promise you that. If you're of that belief, then you can just go ahead and kind of dismiss that quickly, because you're not going to go as far as your other. You have to depend on yourself, believe in yourself. But if you think you're the Lone Ranger kind of carrying that burden, you know, that's a far lonely path. His comment was this. He said that, you know, when I took the company public, I knew I had to hire people who knew what I didn't, could do what I couldn't, and not feel threatened by it. And he lived that. I mean, he brought people in that did those things. And so to me, it comes down to leadership, and he talked about humility, having the courage to admit that you don't know everything, that you don't even know what you don't know, and admit that. So that's, for me, and it just kind of sums up my own philosophy, which is not unique. It is that none of us are as smart as all of us, and by that I mean it does take a team, it does take a village, all those things for there to be a significant level of success. Which one? All right. So he said, I knew I had to hire people who knew what I didn't, could do what I couldn't, and not feel threatened by them.
That's awesome. One more question.
I think George wanted to respond to that one, though.
I was just going to say, Arkansas is the home of Walmart. It's one of the largest companies in the universe.
Yep.
And Sam Walton's philosophy was, he would tell his people, this is what I want to see, the bottom line. What you do from here down doesn't matter to me. I want to know what drops out at the bottom. I always believed in going where people don't know you. Whatever field you're interested in, go where they are. Go. And you may be the stranger in the room, but they don't know what you know or what you don't know. Just go where places where people don't know you. you're interested in engineering, go to places where engineers go. And it won't be long before people will start inviting you to the front. I got involved in politics that way. So going to the event, it wasn't long, but people realized there's a stranger in the room and began to want to know and want to find out. Go where they don't know you and listen. And listen. The founder of Arkansas Best Corporation, I went to work for them right out of the military. Founder Robert A. Young, Sr. When I first went to work for them, they were addressing diversity. And I was sitting in the human resources manager's office in this big open space, a lot like this, a lot of people working at desk, and it got very quiet in the room. And I noticed the quietness. And I asked the manager, I said, what happened? Everybody stopped talking. He says, turn around and look at those glass doors in the back. And when I did, I saw this short guy. He's about 5'6". He said, that is the founder of this company. He noticed me right away because I was the only African-American in the room almost. And he comes to me and he said, son, have you had coffee today? I said, no, sir, I haven't. He said, join me. From that 35-minute conversation, I learned enough life lessons to get me where I am today. And one of the things he taught me, he said, son, when I first went into the trucking business, he was an attorney by trade. And a friend said, trucking is going to be huge one day. So go out and invest some of that lawyer money and buy you a small truck line. And he did. He began to go where they didn't know him, began to go to the trucking conferences. And people would notice he was the new guy in the room. And they would ask technical trucking questions. And he would always say, you know, that's a good question. Let me give that some thought. And then he would go research that. He said, I just don't talk a lot. Go where they don't know you, and you don't have to talk a lot.
Got one more question here.
My question is, since you all been in positions such as, I guess, presidents and had large corporations, made a lot of money, have these companies or your company that you work for ever thought about coming back to the community so that you can actually share what you have succeeded? Like today, is that something that we have to just actually ask you all to do? Or is there programs already developed for you all to come back to the communities to give back?
I'm glad you asked that. I've been waiting for that one all day. Let me tell you what I do. I'm an Arkansas legislator, and I work at the state capitol there in Arkansas, and I'm one of 24 Democrats. The rest are Republicans. And many people, my town there's about 90,000 people live there, and it's about 8% African American, about 15% my Latino brothers and sisters, but 8% African American. Because of the things my father taught me about being kind, being soft-spoken, being bold to go places where people don't know you. I'm the third highest ranking member in the Arkansas House of Representatives because of those things. Now, what I do when I go home, I founded an organization called the Fort Smith Roundtable about 12 years ago. It's an organization consisting of men like Jim and Josh and many of you. The professions run the gamut, from the guy that rides on the back of the garbage truck to the guy that runs the major poultry plant in town. And what we decided to do was be a major player in making a difference in the lives of children, not only African-American children, as you just heard the demographic. So that meant a lot of Latino and white children were in our program. We founded a program called the Golden Knights Program. It's a leadership/mentoring program where we will go into the school for 30 minutes a week with an idea of teaching these young men, 5th, 6th graders. We're now in almost every public school in the city. We teach the 5th and 6th graders the soft skills, how to introduce yourself, how to introduce the organization you belong to, how to tell someone your school and what your school is recognized for. And they're part of the leadership team. We take them to the state capitol. We take them to the Clinton Presidential Library. We take them to the universities. They're all part of our team. We sponsor Little League football, basketball. Well, why do we do that? That gives me an opportunity to get down on one knee and stare these young people in the face and say, you can do exactly what I do. So at the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, when I pass my mirror, I can say I personally did something to make a difference in a child's life.
Jim, I'm going to give you a minute to respond to that question if you'd like to.
Well, just on to the question itself, I think that certainly corporations recognize their platform, their voice. A lot of times it goes to PR, that following up after Harvey and relief efforts and things like that. It is a good way to give back and help those who were not fortunate to have gotten through it unscathed. But the other side, don't make any mistake about this, that there's some PR, there's some branding value that goes with that. And that's not a bad thing overall, but it still has to come from here. And the employees that make up that organization have that opportunity to respond to that and to make it so much more than what was initially expected. So I think there's both a corporate and an organic element to that.
And thanks, Josh, for allowing me to make one other comment. I serve on the Education Committee in the legislature, and what we did was we're implementing a program. It's called Creating Professional Learning Communities in Education. And we are teaching the teachers how to teach. And it goes back to a time when I was a young boy. The fundamental principle of all of that is everyone at the school is responsible for educating that child. It runs from the principal to the janitor. And they're responsible for keeping up with that child's life from the time he walks through the door as a first grader up until the time he walks across the stage to get his BS degree. For all we know, that second grader may be the spark in his life. Why should we distance him from that teacher? It's that teacher's responsibility. Keep up with him. Know what he's doing. Be that person to encourage him. And it's a mindset change for the teachers and the educators. We're asking them to give up some old prejudices, some old stereotypes. All too often when that child walks through the door for the first time, the teacher has a preconceived idea how much he can learn. And they teach down to what they think he's going to be. And we're encouraging them to get rid of those stereotypes, get rid of those prejudices, and understand when that child walks through the door, you are responsible for his education, period. Has nothing to do with his dad. Stop holding parents responsible for what you're supposed to be doing and make a difference in that child's life. And know what he's doing. You had him in the second grade, but you ought to know what he's doing when he gets to the ninth. Thank you.
Would you guys stand up, please, and honor these two gentlemen? All right, thank you.